Hey guys, we're trying what's called a flipped classroom, and that's where the lecture part isn't done in the class. We do other things then, but the lecture is done outside the class, in this case, a YouTube video. So we're going to cover voting campaigns and elections, as well as the final chapter on the media. Notice we have a discussion board. Don't forget, only do 10 of 12. I'm only counting the 10, and there is no assignment this week. We've got learning objectives here about campaigns, party caucuses, the role of the Electoral College, court rulings on campaign finance, the significance and impact of polling, which failed miserably in 2016, and assessing the effectiveness of U.S. campaigns. So here we go. The Constitution and the founders really were not fond of the democracy. Remember, we're a republic, a government of the people. Senators were not elected directly at all. State legislators picked them. That was changed by a later amendment. President, still not directly elected, done through the Electoral College. House of Representatives member are, that is the people's, the Democratic House elected every 2 years. Suffrage is something, as you well know, started out with male land owning Protestants typically. And so that's been changed over the years to expand it. That's one of the hallmarks. That's how we feel we're more a democracy than a republic because we've expanded those who can vote. So, why Americans don't vote? So, we have lower voter turnout, particularly among younger people, among poor, those with less education, racial minorities. So why don't they vote? Well, the whole notion of registering. Voting on a Tuesday is often difficult. There's lots of elections, primaries and general elections, special elections. People don't feel connected. That's what efficacy is. People are not as connected to the political party, and there's apathy out there. So the voter mobilization is the efforts by the parties to get out the vote. Worked well. I'm going to highlight 2016. Both sides had record vote, just that one seemed to get a little bit more than the other one. The motor voter bill, so that's number 31 on the study guide. That's where you can register to vote when you do your driver's license. So why Americans don't vote? There's also this social connectedness. People are not participating as much in groups and community. And there's also a change through the generations. So active generations replaced by less politically engaged one. I think Obama did a good job. Bernie Sanders did a good job of reinvigorating younger people to vote again. The rational non-voter is someone who says, well, I really can't make a difference. Uh, I have to find other motivating reasons to vote. As you can see, voter turnout here, voter turnout in presidential elections, a little bit above 50. Sometimes it gets above 60. Look at the 1960 election, Kennedy and Nixon. There's one that really generated a lot. And if we look at the 2012 election, Obama had slightly over 60%. Again, really generated a lot. And I would say that voter turnout is projected at 4.7% higher than before. It'll be well over 60%. So both parties did a good job. See, the midterm election, the midterm turnout is always a good 20 points lower, typically. So, does not voting matter? And some argue that lower voter turnout rate does have significant consequences for democracy. It doesn't connect people to government. There's the whole legitimacy of the elections. So it is important for people to vote, and people that don't vote don't feel as connected with the government. So, how voters decide. There are three kind of linchpin reasons why people vote. Number one is just their party identification. That's been the longest one, Democrats and Republicans, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. Then the second is the particular candidate involved. So, whether it's a president, a senator, or a mayor, or a city councilman, that voters get clear opinions about their impressions of the candidate, how they're able to handle the job. And then thirdly is issues. So there are specific issues that people want to vote on. For example, who's going to put people on the Supreme Court? Or how do you feel about health care? Those were key issues in the 2016 election. So prospective voting is the notion that you're going to vote on a well-informed opinion with the consideration of how the future is going to turn out. But most Americans tend to be retrospective voters. That's number 32. They're going to have their voting decision on reactions to past performance that either approve the status quo or signal a desire for change. And again in 2016, Hillary Clinton was seen as the status quo and Donald Trump was seen as an agent of change. Agree with him or not, and there were many people who disagreed with him, still voted for him because they were registering a vote for change. Presidential elections, and we happen to have one in this particular class. So, four stages. First is the pool of eligible candidates, like 17 Republicans. Then it's narrowing it down through a nomination process leading to a national convention. And we had the one in Cleveland right here for the Republicans, Philadelphia for the Democrats. Then there's the general election campaign, one of the dirtiest, hardest fought campaigns in our history, and then validating the results through the Electoral College, which will happen in December. So the invisible primary, number 33, is early attempts to build campaign before declaring candidacy. If you're running for president, on average, you have to raise $1 million a day. $1 million a day. So many people fall out because they get 3%, 4%, 5% in initial, voter image type things. And so their early attempts to build get kind of overlooked by other candidates, and then they drop out. So presidential candidates, again, pre-primary season, that's all about credibility and raising money for your organization. And now let's look at parties and caucuses. So the party caucus, number 34, is a local gathering of party members to choose convention delegates. That's one way to do it. Iowa does it that way. Some of the New England states do it. Most states use a presidential primary. That's an election where voters choose the delegates, usually binding them for one round at their national convention. And we've talked before about open and closed primaries. Ohio is an open primary state. That's number 36. So I could go to the polls on nominating day and vote in either the Republican or the Democratic primary. In closed primary states, you can only vote in the party to which you are registered, which is how Kentucky does it. So front loading is scheduling a bunch of primaries, the early Tuesday primaries that are done in March and April to try to get momentum for someone's campaign. The general election strategy. So as we looked at the Win 270 site and you yourself picked out how to pick a president of the United States, notice that the key part was swing states. And we can name some of the swing states in the presidential election. That would have been, um, let's see, Texas, obviously Ohio. We talked a lot about that when we had our class on that. Uh, Florida is always a swing state. Now there were some states that were considered safe states that turned out to be in jeopardy, and that was Pennsylvania and Michigan and Wisconsin. And all of those went towards Donald Trump, and that really was an interesting part of the election. I'll talk a little bit more about it as we get through it. So, who runs the campaign? Donald Trump made it look like his family ran the campaign. That was kind of an image that he put out. But all campaigns are run by professionals, especially presidential, senatorial, congressional campaigns are all done by professionals. So, presenting the candidate, having a clear understanding of strength, and the need to follow polls to make sure citizens, remember, tracking polls as they go along. So, here's some key items for the test here. Swing voters, about a third of the electorate, undecided. And I'd say in this 2016 election, that swing voter stayed a swing voter for a long time, many of them not liking either candidate. So a valiance issue, number 40, is where the voter and the candidates share the same position. For example, feelings about healthcare reform or feelings about recovery and getting Oppo research is getting a background on a candidate. Position research or issues where the parties and the candidates differ. Healthcare is a good one, where the Republicans would like to scrap and start over, and the Democrats want to tweak. A wedge issue is a controversial issue that splits the other party's voters. So you'd like to throw a wedge issue out there, hope it happens, because then it puts the party in kind of disarray. In the Democratic primary, when you had Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton, the economy and liberals and taxing people with high income groups was definitely one that wedged the Democratic Party. And much as Hillary tried, it was hard to get the Sanders people to connect. So issue ownership is the tendency of one party to seem more competent on an issue. The Electoral College, the confusing Electoral College, we did it with the 12th Amendment in 1803. The original scheme was the person who won as president, the person runner up was VP. But today we put both the president and a VP on the ballot. So this was created to kind of hedge our bet on a direct election. So the Electoral College is basically 48 winner take alls, and I talked about Maine and Nebraska having kind of split one. The electoral votes match the congressional delegations. 270, as you know, is the number to win from 538 votes, 438 congressmen and 100 senators. The House decides in the absence of having a majority. That only happened one time in 1825. So, criticisms of the Electoral College, it does discourage voter turnout. People don't feel that connected to it. It does incentivize restricting the franchise. Swing states get a ton of attention. Ohio loves it. We get dozens of visits from presidential candidates, but I can tell you, Alaska did not get too many visits. It does favor the less populous states just in terms of the numbers and disadvantaged third parties. They're hard to get in. So the advantages, it allegedly prevents urban dominance. The rural can speak up. This election was one that really demonstrated that, 2016. Promotes two-party stability. If you can't win a state, you don't get any electoral votes. So despite getting 3, 4, 5% of the vote, the Libertarian Party doesn't get any electoral college. And it does protect the minority interest. So here's the big picture on how it works in the 528. They're showing here the Obama against, 332 against Romney, who got 206. So remember, I called it at 319. I figured one or two less states. And then we see today, even though it's not settled yet, Donald Trump is already at 279, which was, quite good. A surprising election. So if you look at the map here, you see, blue on some of the edges, a little blue in the south. These are urban areas and a lot of red dots. By county, uh, most counties, by county, are Republican, are red. And then it's the fact that the larger counties in the urban areas are deeply blue, and they compensate for the red that's in that state. So if you look at the key states here, look at Florida, for example, where you had Miami-Dade County not getting enough vote out to compensate for the panhandle. You had Pennsylvania, where Philadelphia and Pittsburgh did not get enough vote out to compensate for the rural areas. In Ohio, Cleveland, our own Cleveland and Cincinnati did not get the vote out. In Michigan, Detroit did not get the vote out. Wisconsin, Madison, and the University of Wisconsin there did not get the vote out. Interestingly enough, in Colorado, did get the vote out. Nevada, there were the cities, basic cities like Denver got the vote out. Illinois, great example. Chicago really got the vote out. But that meant that Hillary won those last three states, Nevada, Colorado, and they got Las Vegas and Reno there, and then Chicago for Illinois. But the failure to get African American votes out in the Midwest and Latino votes out in Florida was the doom for Hillary Clinton. She just did not have enough urban voting with a large enough margin. She was getting 60, 64, 66, 68% in the cities, which normally is fine. But Donald Trump was getting 75, 70, 68% in the rural areas. And those rural areas just kind of accumulated over time. So who were the voters? You can look here by gender from the 2012 election. I think a lot of this is pretty well the same for 2016. If you look at the issues on the economy, the deficit, healthcare, and foreign policy, again, those split the same pretty much. in the election in 2016, national issues, medical marijuana did, and even recreational marijuana did very well. People wanting to moratorium or abolish the death penalty did not do well. Anybody that had any health care on a ballot got totally killed, 80 to 20 typically. Those are some of the issues that voters voted on. So the media and general election, we had one of the toughest campaigns in 2016. Lots of not just negative advertising, which used to be the place where this is, but candidates saying very negative things. People would think unprofessional things. I would say from Trump's perspective, it was very much talking in ways that people shocked people. I think that was part of connecting to an audience that said that he isn't following the general norms, and that signals that he's a change person. That was a deliberate strategy on his part. Notice the text says debate performance is very much important. I would say in this election, debate performance turned people off more than anything else. So the money thing, this is interesting. 2012, the campaigns are at 1.9 billion. So before, I looked up the 2016 election, and Hillary had 700 million, and Trump only 300 million. So they spent basically a little over $1 billion. So money had been going up and up and up and up, but very deliberate by Donald Trump to not spend as much money on the media and really focus that on the social media campaign. Now, people get matching funds. That's number 43. These are optional and subject to a $50 million limit. And money comes in two ways. Hard money is money that's regulating to the contributions. It's money directly on the campaign. Soft money, number 44, unregulated, indirect funding. So those are get out the vote campaigns or issue campaigns run by people that are not connected directly to the campaign. The issue advocacy ads is what they're called. In terms of Supreme Court cases, one of the learning outcomes, Citizens United versus FEC in 2010, 5-4 Supreme Court that basically said that money given to a political campaign is a First Amendment right and therefore unlimited spending. And that's been a huge boon to people in elections in the last few years. So I've already talked a little bit about the money, how it keeps going up and up and up. And we'll see, even though we had the McCain-Feingold Act, which was declared unconstitutional in the Citizens United case, we'll see if there'll be any electoral reform in the new administration. So increase in total spending, here's look at it from 96, 2000, whoop, straight up. Electoral mandate. So that's the perception that the election signals a broad support for the winner's proposed policy. Donald Trump feels that he has a mandate. It's going to be interesting to see what that is. Mandate to stop immigration into this country, a mandate to change, scrap, rebuild healthcare reform, a mandate to get the economy working again and connected to that a strong international presence, reworking trade agreements and other things to stop things going abroad. So democracy is better off with different types of voters, both rational and irrational, informed and uninformed. The whole point is if everybody participates, it's a good system. So elections do make a difference, particularly at the local level. Well, that's all I've got here, and I hope this helps you well. We'll spend time in class on the essay and going over the specifics of the study guide. If you have any questions, just email me directly or send me a note through Blackboard. Hey, good job, guys.